6 hours of footage, one clue, then nothing. She vanished without a trace, but investigators had 6 hours of footage and only one clue. Every camera showed where she went, none showed where she disappeared. She was there, right there, on camera, walking, breathing, alive, and then she wasn't. This is not a ghost story. This is not fiction. What you are about to hear is documented, recorded, and still, to this day, unexplained. The footage was pulled from a security camera mounted near the east exit of a parking structure. Timestamp 11:47 p.m. The image is grainy, the kind of grainy that feels intentional, like the darkness itself is trying to hide something, but she's visible. A young woman, mid-20s, moving at a steady pace, no sign of distress, no one following her, no sudden stop. She simply walks to the edge of the frame and disappears. Investigators reviewed that footage more than 40 times, frame by frame, slowing it down, brightening the shadows, enhancing the corners of the image. What they found, or rather, what they didn't find, became the core of an investigation that would consume the next 3 years of multiple detectives' careers. 6 hours. That's how long she had been on camera before she vanished. 6 hours of ordinary footage, arriving, moving through hallways, stopping at a vending machine, checking her phone. Nothing alarming. Nothing that would make you pull her aside and ask if she was okay. She looked fine. She looked like anyone. But here's what makes this case different from the hundreds of missing persons files that go cold every year. In those 6 hours of footage, there is exactly one anomaly, one moment, barely 2 seconds long, and it took investigators 8 months to even notice it. We'll get to that moment, but first, you need to understand who she was, because the story of what happened to her doesn't start in that parking structure. It starts weeks earlier in a series of events so quiet, so ordinary, that no one thought to connect them until it was far too late. Her name has been withheld from public records at the request of her family. In investigative files, she is referred to only as Jane Doe 114. She was a graduate student. She had a part-time job. She called her mother every Sunday without fail. The last call was 3 weeks before she disappeared. Her mother said she sounded tired, but not afraid. Not like someone who knew what was coming. Nobody ever does. 8 months into the investigation, a junior analyst on the cold case unit was reviewing archived footage for an unrelated disappearance. Different case, different city, different year, but something caught her eye. A pattern in the background of a timestamp sequence that she had seen before. She pulled the original file, cross-referenced it, and then she made a call that reopened everything. The anomaly in the footage of Jane Doe 114 lasts exactly 1.8 seconds. At the 4:22 a.m. mark, deep in the quiet stretch of the recording, when the parking structure is completely empty, a shadow moves in the upper left corner of the frame. Not a person, not a vehicle, a shadow, moving in the wrong direction. Shadows don't move against a light source. Every investigator who looked at that frame said the same thing. It's a glitch, a compression artifact, a camera error. The footage was old, the system was outdated. These things happen. Case closed, move on. Except the analyst had seen it before, in the other footage, from the other case, the shadow in the upper left corner, the same direction, the same 1.8 seconds. 2 different cameras, 2 different buildings, 2 different cities, 2 different women who were never found. When the analyst submitted her findings to the lead investigator, the response was immediate and strange. The file was flagged. Her access to the archived system was suspended pending a routine review. The review, she was told, could take several weeks. It took 11 months. By the time she was back at her desk, the cross-reference case had been reclassified. The second footage file had been marked corrupted, unrecoverable, but she had already made a copy. What she found when she analyzed both files side by side was not a glitch. It was not a compression artifact. The shadow in both recordings moved with a geometry that doesn't occur naturally, not from a passing car, not from a light flicker, not from any environmental source that investigators could identify. The angle was wrong. The speed was wrong. And in both cases, within 6 hours of that shadow appearing in the footage, the person being recorded was gone. One clue, that's all there was. And the moment someone got close to understanding it, the file disappeared too. There are cases that go cold because there are no leads, and then there are cases that go cold because something or someone keeps pulling the heat away. The lead detective assigned to Jane Doe 114 requested a formal review of the shadow anomaly 14 months into the investigation. His request was denied. He submitted it again with the analyst's comparative data attached. Denied again. He went above his department. He contacted a university forensic imaging lab. Privately, not through official channels. The lab agreed to look at the footage. 3 weeks later, the lab director called him. The conversation lasted less than 4 minutes. The director said the footage was inconclusive. He said the lab could not produce a formal report at this time. He said he was sorry. The detective said the director's voice during that call sounded different, flat, like someone reading from a script. He never heard from the lab again. What the detective did next is where the case gets complicated and where official records and unofficial accounts begin to diverge. According to department files, he took a leave of absence for personal reasons. According to 2 colleagues who spoke anonymously to an independent journalist 3 years later, he didn't take a leave. He was asked to step back, quietly, no formal action, no reprimand, just a conversation in a closed office, a reassignment to a different unit, and a file that was quietly moved from active to inactive status. The journalist who received those anonymous tips published a partial account of the story in an independent online outlet. The article was up for 6 days before it was removed. The journalist cited a legal notice. She has not commented publicly on the case since. Here is what remains, documented and verifiable. Jane Doe 114 was last seen on camera at 11:47 p.m. She was reported missing 31 hours later. A formal investigation was opened. A shadow anomaly was identified in the footage. All formal attempts to analyze that anomaly were blocked or abandoned. The case was reclassified as inactive after 22 months. No remains were ever found. No suspect was ever named. No explanation was ever given. One clue, buried, and the people who got closest to it, reassigned, silenced, disappeared from the record. There is a version of this story that ends with a rational explanation. Equipment failure, human error, a series of coincidences that, when viewed together, appear to mean something, but don't. Investigators, analysts, detectives, they see patterns where there are none. It happens. Cases go cold. Answers don't always come. That version of the story is possible. But here is what the footage actually shows, stripped of every interpretation, every theory, every attempt to explain it away. At the 4:22 a.m. mark in the upper left corner of the recording, a shadow moves for 1.8 seconds in a direction inconsistent with any identified light source in or around the building. Within 6 hours of that timestamp, the person recorded on that camera is gone. The same anomaly appears in footage from a second location, a second camera, a second disappearance. The analyst who identified the connection had her access revoked. The forensic lab that was asked to review the footage went silent. The detective who pushed hardest for answers was quietly removed from the case. That is not a theory. That is the documented sequence of events. Now, here's the question that nobody in an official capacity has ever answered. The parking structure where Jane Doe 114 was last recorded had a 12-camera system. The anomaly appeared on camera 7. Cameras 1 through 6 and 8 through 12 recorded nothing unusual that night. Camera 7's footage was the only file flagged during the investigation. It was also the only file that was never formally entered into the evidence archive. Someone pulled that file before it was logged. Someone knew which camera to pull, and whoever it was, they knew exactly where to look. The analyst still has her copy. She has not released it publicly. In a brief statement to the independent journalist, before the article was taken down, she said only this: "The shadow in the footage is not the mystery. The shadow is the signal. What it's signaling, that's what they don't want you to find. Jane Doe 114 has never been found. The case remains inactive, and somewhere on a hard drive that has never been entered into any official record, 6 hours of footage sit in the dark, waiting. Watch closely." One clue remains unsolved, and she has never been found.